नमस्कार, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल दोस्तों। स्वागत है आपका एक बार फिर से हमारे YouTube चैनल ब्रास फ्यूजन्स पर, जहां हम आपके लिए एक बार फिर से लेकर आए हैं एक नया लेसन।
About different stages of a private international law dispute. We started with jurisdiction. We moved on to classification. Further, we talked about the incidental question, and then we were talking about renvoi. Now, the broader categorization seems to be, or rather the strict categorization seems to be, one, when a matter having a foreign element comes before a court first satisfies itself about, say, jurisdiction. The next step is to identify the applicable law. Now, in identifying the applicable law, court will have to first identify what is the nature of the dispute, whether the dispute is, say, matter relating to tort, contract, or it is a matrimonial matter. Now, so once court is satisfied about it, then court will choose the relevant private international law rules of the forum to say which foreign law would apply in a situation like that, if at all a foreign law would apply in the case at hand. Now, after the identification process has taken, court will refer to the foreign law and then solve the matter at hand. That seems to be a very simple way of putting how different stages of private international law disputes are placed. But there are complications involved in how, for example, classification is done, or how, for example, an incidental question, meaning thereby a question which is not directly which is not the main issue but is directly connected with the main issue at hand, or which is a subsidiary question, so that unless you decide the subsidiary question or the incidental question, you cannot decide the main question is placed. Now, after having discussed these ideas, we further moved on to the concept of renvoi, and we saw as to how this idea of renvoi, which is not accepted in India. Indian courts have not used renvoi, but it is generally considered as a very technical and, in fact, by Cheshire and many other scholars, as a problematic doctrine. At the same time, it cannot be denied that courts have referred to renvoi in the past. British courts have referred to renvoi in the past in few of the judgments. French court, they have followed renvoi. They generally follow renvoi. Similarly, other jurisdictions, they don't, or they do follow renvoi in terms of solving private international law disputes. So we were just trying to acquaint ourselves with how renvoi actually works, how this doctrine helps in achieving uniform application of the foreign law. In so doing, we first saw that renvoi is not one single doctrine. Renvoi can further be classified into different types. And the last lecture was completely devoted to what we call as remission and transmission. Now, in terms of understanding these two ideas of remission and transmission, what we saw was that, and the example which we took, and something which we are going to follow even today for the sake of convenience, is that imagine there is a person who is a British national, but at the time of his death, he was a British national all through his life, but at the time of his death, he was domiciled in France. So a person, British citizen, but French domicile. Now, he left certain movable property in England. Now, the question which comes before the court is with regard to succession to the movable property. Now, court will first satisfy. Now, how will a private international law dispute actually pan out in a situation like this? So the first step would be that the court would satisfy itself about the jurisdiction, whether court has jurisdiction to look into the matter or not. Having satisfied itself about the jurisdiction, the next thing for the court would be to go to the next step and classify the issue at hand. Right? Court classifies the issues, and maybe court will do it explicitly, or even without getting into explicit examination, court would say, conclude that it is a matter relating to succession to movable property. Now, court will use its private international law rules to see what is the applicable law in a situation like this. Now, British private international law rules, for example, says that when it comes to succession to movable property, the domicile of the person or the domicile of the deceased person is important, or the matter is to be decided in accordance with the law of domicile. Now, the domicile in this particular situation is that of France. So the British court would refer to the French law and would say that, okay, fine, this is how the French law looks at the entire issue of succession to movable property and would apply the French law to solve the dispute at hand. That's the simple way of understanding. So in a very simple situation, I mean, the moment your private international law rules refer to a foreign law which needs to be applied in a given situation, you just apply the law, the substantive law, and then solve the dispute. The complication comes where the imagination of law is expanded beyond mere substantive law or a purely internal law, but also covers private international law rules of the foreign country. So, for example, when the British judge is referring to the French law, he does not only refer to the internal law of purely internal law of France dealing with substantive rights and obligations, but also the private international law rules of France. And if private international law rules of France notes that no, it is the law of nationality which should decide the question of succession to movable property, then the matter is referred back to the British law. Now, this entire phenomena that where a British judge, while deciding an issue, having a foreign element, using its private international law, acknowledges that, okay, a foreign law would apply. But in terms of applying the foreign law, the British judge does not confine herself or himself to only substantive rights and obligations, but also extends that idea to say how private international law rules of the other countries are placed. And then the matter gets reverted back to its own jurisdiction, or to its own law rather, in such this particular phenomena, this entire back and forth is known as renvoi, or rather single renvoi, or partial renvoi, or so the single renvoi or partial renvoi. Yeah. Now there's another phenomena which is transmission. Now, when we say transmission, what we mean is that instead of referring back to the British law, what if the foreign law refers it back to a subsequent maybe to a third country, say the law of habitual residence at the time of death should decide about the question, or should decide the question of succession to movable property. In such a situation, a British judge will first refer to French law, both the substantive law and the private international rules of France, and realize that no, it further says that the law of habitual residence should decide the issue of succession to property, and then further refers to the third country, say Spain, to decide the matter at hand. Now, this is known as transmission. So what we have is single renvoi, which is also known as transmission, or which is also known as remission, and second thing which we have is transmission. So this is how it is placed. So we have understood two concepts. One is single renvoi or remission, and the second concept is that of transmission. I hope this part was clear. Now today we are going to move one step ahead. And today we are going to talk about total renvoi, which is also known as double renvoi, or which is also known as English doctrine of renvoi. Now, when we are studying this, please keep it in mind that Indian courts have not invoked renvoi in any case. So at least as a matter of practice, renvoi, the invocation of renvoi in India is not to be located. I mean, at least Govind Raj concludes that affirmatively, that okay, now in India renvoi is not applicable. However, that is not the case in many jurisdictions. Of course, many jurisdictions have invoked doctrine of Renvoy. England in few cases, France does that. Similarly, few other countries also use doctrine of Renvoy. Now, since we have understood single Renvoy or remission, or which is also known as partial Renvoy, we have also understood what is transmission. Now, this is the third type of Renvoy that we are going to talk about. And this is total Renvoy or double Renvoy or English doctrine of Renvoy. Now, the single most important factor, and when I'm dealing with this particular idea here, maybe I'm dealing with a bit more experience because I was having this lecture with your classmates in the other section, and we tried to work around with a number of examples and a number of ways to understand this idea of double Renvoy, and therefore maybe it is fairly easier for me now to explain it further. I hope it is easy for me to explain it further. If you don't understand it, please feel free to intervene. All right. Now, when it comes to double Renvoy, we are dealing with a scenario where two jurisdictions are involved. One is where the matter is being decided, and the other is the country whose foreign law might apply in that particular situation. Now, just imagine that both these two jurisdictions practice or invoke Renvoy, and when I say Renvoy, I'm saying single Renvoy. So both these countries invoke single Renvoy to solve the disputes which they face. So both these countries basically, I don't know how to put it in more simple sense, but both these countries accept what is known as doctrine of single Renvoy, remission, or partial Renvoy. How would a court decide the matter in such a situation? We are particularly worried about English doctrine of Renvoy, because the originating point, or rather its invocation, can be located in the examples emerging from British courts. Now, in such a situation, there is a possibility where this back and forth might happen again and again. If both the countries adopt single Renvoy. Again, to explain this point, I will take the help of an example. And the example is this, that imagine, and the example is again the same one, but maybe a bit modified in terms of application of foreign law. Imagine again that a British court is looking into a matter dealing with succession to movable property. Now, the person in relation to which this succession to movable property is being analyzed was a British subject, citizen of Britain, and domiciled in France when he died. So this was the legal status of the person, something which was the case even in the first illustration. Now, the matter is before the British court. Now, the British court is dealing with the question of succession to movable property. Now, in so doing, British court will first satisfy itself about the jurisdiction part of it. Then court will get into the classification part. Fine. Then court will look into its own private international law rules and say that, okay, it looks like that according to English private international law rules, law of domicile should apply in relation to succession to movable property. It means that the French law should apply in terms of solving the dispute in relation to solving a dispute of such kind that the person is domiciled in France when he passed away. Now, the court will refer to the French law to solve the dispute at hand. And here again, just like the first situation, court refers to the private international law rules of France as well. Now, here the realization which the court or the judge, the British judge might face is this, that France also practices single Renvoy. So the question is, what if French court was deciding this issue? What if this entire matter was before the French court? How would a French court deal with a situation like this? In such a situation, I mean, just turn this entire situation upside down. That if a French court was looking into this particular matter, then the French court would have referred to its own private international law rules only to realize that British court or the British law is to be applied in this case, and when it would have referred to the British law, including British private international law rules, it would have remitted the matter back to the French law, saying that as per the British private international rules, it is the law of domicile which should decide the matter at hand. Now, this is what a French court would have done, following doctrine of Renvoi. How would a British judge solve such a situation where the same applicable law is identified in terms of solving the dispute? In double Renvoi, this is precisely what happens. In double Renvoi, the British judge, and as many scholars put it, I'm using the same phrase for convenience, that a British judge will step into the shoes of the French judge to solve the matter at hand. Or to use another phrase from Cheshire, that a British judge would make an artificial journey to the French jurisdiction and will decide the matter at hand. So he will behave as if he is working as a French judge and then identify the applicable law. This is known as doctrine of double Renvoi, where the matter is not just remitted back to the British law, but here, since both the countries follow the policy of invoking Renvoi, or single Renvoi rather, then the matter would be referred back to the French law. Because the private international law rules would also imply that Renvoi is just one, is a part of it, or is part of the policy of the court at hand. Is it clear? I mean, are there any questions? I mean, maybe I've tried to put it very simply because I know that I might have to do it again.
So please repeat the example.
Yes, thank you, Shubham. I was almost anticipating it. Yeah. Now, the example was very simple, that there was this person who was a British citizen, but had a French domicile when he passed away. Now, he left certain movable property in England. Now, the matter is before an English court deciding matters before an English court regarding the succession to movable property left by this deceased person. Now, the British court, how will a British court actually deal with a matter involving foreign element? In such a situation, the first step would be to satisfy itself about the jurisdiction. Now, court would say that fine, I mean, it looks like we have jurisdiction. The second step would be to classify the issue. So either explicitly or implicitly, court would conclude that yes, the matter relates to succession to movable property. We also presume that there is no incidental question involved in this particular case. Now, court will subsequently go to British private international law rules to see what is the applicable law in this scenario. Now, after getting into the British private international law rules, court would say that fine. I mean, as per the British private international law rules, it seems that the French law, that is the law of the domicile, should apply. So if British private international law rule says that in matters relating to succession to movable property, the law of domicile should apply. In such a situation, it's identifiable that when the person died, he had a French domicile, and therefore law of France would apply. Now, when we say that law of France would apply, what we saw in the last lecture was that law of France could be divided into two parts for the purposes of such dispute. One is, say, private international law rules, and the other could be purely internal rules, say, detailing substantive rights and obligations. Now, doctrine of Renvoi necessitates that private international rules are also to be taken into consideration. So the court will look into the private international rules of France and say, and then realize that as per private international rules of France, the question of succession to movable property is to be decided in accordance with law of nationality. Now, in such a situation, court would remit the matter back to, or refer the matter back to the British law to decide the issue at hand. This is Renvoi. In double Renvoi, or this is the first is single Renvoy. In double Renvoy, however, situation would go one step ahead, where if the French court also adopts this policy of single Renvoy, what would happen in a situation like that? Now, in a situation like that, what would happen is that British court would use its private international law rules. We are using the same example. British court would use the private international law rules of Britain to identify that French law would apply in this scenario, because the French law was, or because the France was the domicile of the person concerned. But court will also look into the private international rules of France and then say that the private international rules of France, however, talks about law of nationality to decide the question of succession to movable property. The matter comes back to Britain. But because French court also used doctrine of Renvoy, therefore, it will make another inquiry very much similar to like what we did in terms of talking about single Renvoy. It will make another inquiry and say that, okay, what is the position of British court in this regard? Or what is the position of British private international law rules in that regard? And if British private international law rules say that, no, it is the law of domicile which should determine the issue at hand, then the matter would be referred back to French law again for decision. So this back and forth which happens just once in single Renvoy, an extra layer of engagement is further reproduced in double Renvoy. And this happens only because the other forum, the country in relation, the country of which the foreign law is being applied also practices single Renvoy. I will try to explain it again for convenience, that if a British judge is deciding the issue at hand, the British judge would hypothetically consider herself or himself as a French judge. So the moment private international law rules of Britain says that no, it is the law of France, that is law of domicile, should apply to the dispute at hand. To solve the dispute further through the application of Renvoy, a British judge would step into the shoes of a French judge. Or a British judge would make a hypothetical journey and a journey to France and say that, okay, what if I was a French judge and I was deciding this issue at hand? What if this issue was before me? How would a French judge decide the issue at hand? A French judge would, using Renvoy, would first refer to British law, and after looking at British private international law rules, it will refer the matter back to French law in order to find the applicable law. This is precisely what double Renvoy is. That it's not just at the examination of the foreign private international law rules the matter ends. And if private international rules of that country says that no, it's the law of the forum which should apply as the law of nationality of the deceased, then apply the law and the matter is solved then and there. That is not the case. In double Renvoy, the examination goes one step further. And the examination goes one step further mainly because of the fact that both the jurisdictions, both the forums practice the doctrine of Renvoy or invoke the doctrine of Renvoy. This is precisely what it is. Rahul, Shubham, is it better now? We will redo it. I know we'll explain. Okay, Likivi, is it fine? Donika, Sagar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've understood it. Thank you.
All right. If you want, Sakshi is fine, right? All right. I presume that it's fine. Shubham, it's okay, I presume. Fine. If it is fine, then it's all right. And maybe in the other class, I took some time to explain. All right. If it is fine, then we move ahead. Now, generally, doctrine of Renvoy is seen as problematic, and the criticism is not just confined to double Renvoy. The criticism expands to both single Renvoy and double Renvoy. And In fact, British courts, when they adopted doctrine of double renvoi, they just wanted to do away with the harm where both the countries follow renvoi. So doctrine of double renvoi was something which was not followed in all the countries. I think it was mainly a British innovation, just to make sure that what would happen in a scenario when the foreign jurisdiction also follows renvoi. In such a situation, there would be two different results. In the sense that if, for example, France did not follow renvoi, then France would easily refer to British law and apply the matter at hand. That is what doctrine of single renvoi tries to do away with. Such kind of application of laws, that where a British court would refer to French law to decide the matter at hand, a French court would have referred to, say, British law to decide the matter at hand if there was no renvoi. So if there was nothing called renvoi, the situation would have been that the British court would have referred to, say, French law, applying its own private international rules, and then decided the matter. A French court, on the other hand, would have referred to British law to decide the same matter between the same parties. What doctrine of renvoi achieves to do is to maybe undo the harm of maybe fragmented application, where different applicable law is identified in different situations. So single renvoi does that to a large extent, where the other country, for example, would have applied British law. If France would have applied British law, through the application of single renvoi, British courts also reached the same conclusion, saying that, okay, the matter would have reverted back or remitted back to the British law. But a further problem steps in when both the jurisdictions are in a position to, or both the jurisdictions invoke renvoi. In such a situation, it was a British innovation to come out with something called double renvoi. That if at all there is a situation like that, where a French court, a purely French court, is deciding the matter at hand, and the French court would, after applying single renvoi, would apply it, after applying the single renvoi, would apply its own law. Now, how is the British, how is British court going to solve a situation where both the countries invoke single renvoi? To undo the fragmentation created by single renvoi or invocation of single renvoi in both the countries, basically British courts came out with double renvoi. That no, we reached the same conclusion in a situation where two countries which law can apply in a given situation, would solve a matter at hand. Maybe, how to identify the exact law which the other courts would have applied after the invocation of single renvoi. Maybe double renvoi tries to achieve the same from the perspective of, say, a British judge. That is what the overall intention of invoking double renvoi was. So it was mostly to undo the dangers emerging out of the invocation of single renvoi in two jurisdictions, which of course are the interested legal systems in a dispute at hand. When I say interested, it means that the law of these two countries might apply in a dispute at hand. That is what the larger purpose of double renvoi seems to be. Which of the two approaches meet the objective of minimization of opportunities of forum shopping? Single renvoi or double renvoi, or is it that objective is unachievable under any circumstances? It's very difficult to tell, Manu, realizing that it is one of the criticisms of renvoi itself, that because it is not uniformly applied in all the countries, there's always a danger where parties would make a choice whether to go to a forum which adopts doctrine of renvoi or whether to go to a forum which does not adopt doctrine of renvoi. So that option is always there. And since we are dealing with different municipal legal systems, therefore, of course, we cannot presume uniformity of policies in terms of applying these doctrines. So the opportunities of forum shopping, I would say, would fundamentally depend on or opportunities of forum shopping is prevalent throughout the private international law dispute, or at different stages or in different forms where a foreign element is involved, especially because parties do get an opportunity to choose, okay, fine, if we go to Britain which believes in say, or which adopts doctrine of Renvoy, the matter might be reverted back. But if we go to, say, some other country like India, where Renvoy is not practiced, then of course a particular law would apply using its own Indian private international law rules. So yes, I would say that very difficult to, that would largely depend on factual situation. That, okay, now a particular country, whether it follows doctrine of Renvoy or it does not follow doctrine of Renvoy. Both the situations, however, single Renvoy or double Renvoy, in its intention, in its core, in principle, try to minimize the fragmented application of foreign law. Fragmented application of the law which is to apply in a dispute at hand. So, at its core, these two doctrines try to minimize the danger of fragmentation. At the same time, I cannot conclusively argue that these two doctrines have completely done away with forum shopping, or at least I don't think anybody can really argue that these doctrines have done away with forum shopping, realizing that we are not dealing with one legal system, but multiple legal systems with multiple private international rules. Is that better, both Manvi and Manu?
दोस्तों, अगर आपको आज का लेसन पसंद आया हो तो वीडियो को लाइक करें। इसी के साथ अगर आपने अभी तक हमारा चैनल सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है तो सब्सक्राइब के बटन पर क्लिक करिए और बेल आइकन दबाना ना भूलें, ताकि आपको एजुकेशन से रिलेटेड नए नए अपडेट्स मिलते रहें। और अधिक जानकारी पाने के लिए आप हमारे फेसबुक और इंस्टाग्राम पेज से भी जुड़ सकते हैं, जिसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में दिया गया है। धन्यवाद।